1990s, Maria's bakery had become a New York landmark, not because it was the biggest or the fanciest, but because it was built on love, humility, and the quiet power of perseverance. Maria Alvarez, now in her 70s, walked more slowly these days, her silver hair always tied in a neat bun. But her eyes still sparkled with that same determination that once carried her off a ship into an unknown world. She spent her mornings in the bakery's back office, a cozy room filled with photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes from customers who called her Grandma Maria. Some photos showed her standing beside smiling employees, others captured her teaching little children to roll dough with their tiny hands. She no longer managed the day-to-day business, her nieces and nephews now ran most of the operations, but she visited each store weekly, just to make sure the bread still smelled right. If it doesn't smell like home, she'd tease, you did something wrong. What truly filled her heart now were the people she had raised through her kindness. Former employees came to visit often, now teachers, business owners, artists, nurses. They told her how her words had shaped them, how her faith had given them courage. One day, a young man named Carlos returned after many years. He'd once been a troubled teen she'd hired against everyone's advice. "You'll regret it," people had warned. But Maria had simply said, "Everyone deserves a clean slate, even if it's covered in flour." Carlos had gone on to study culinary arts and open his own bakery in the Bronx. He placed a warm loaf of bread on her counter and said with tears in his eyes, "I owe everything to you." Maria smiled, cutting a slice and handing it back to him. "No, mijo. You owe it to yourself, you just needed someone to remind you what you were made of." Moments like that were her true reward. At night, she often sat by her apartment window, gazing at the lights of the city that had once terrified her. She would whisper to herself, "We did all right, didn't we?" Sometimes, her grandchildren would visit and beg her to tell the story again, the story of how she came to New York with nothing but a dream. She would laugh softly and say, "Ah, but you already know it." They'd insist, "Tell it again, abuela. Tell it from the beginning." And so she would, how she left her island home with a suitcase, how the city nearly broke her, how kindness and courage carried her through. She'd tell them about Mrs. Miller's bakery, about the fire that nearly ended everything, about Samuel and Rosa and all the faces that helped her rise. Her voice would grow soft as she said, "Life will try to make you feel small. But remember, even the smallest seed can crack open concrete if it keeps reaching for the sun." Those were her lessons, simple, human, and eternal. Work with your hands, but lead with your heart. Never be ashamed of humble beginnings. Give more than you take. And always, always share your bread. In her final years, Maria began writing a small memoir, not for fame, but for her family. She titled it Rising Dough, Rising Hope. On the first page, she wrote, "If you ever forget who you are, bake something. It will remind you that creation lives inside you." As time went on, her health began to waver, but her joy never did. On her 85th birthday, the community threw her a grand celebration. Hundreds gathered, customers, employees, even city officials. The air was filled with laughter, the scent of pastries, and music that reminded her of home. When she took the stage to speak, her voice trembled but her words were strong. "I came to this country with fear in my heart and hope in my hands. I found that the two can live together, fear keeps you humble, and hope keeps you moving. If I have learned anything, it is that success is not what you build, but what you give away." The crowd erupted into applause. Many wept. As the celebration wound down, Maria sat quietly near the counter where it had all begun. She looked at the glass display filled with loaves and pastries, each one a symbol of her journey. She closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the city beyond the bakery walls. The sound of subway trains, distant sirens, footsteps, and laughter, it was the same symphony that had once frightened her, now the rhythm of her life's song. She whispered, "Thank you, New York, for everything. When she passed away a few years later, the entire city mourned. Lines formed outside her bakeries as people came to light candles and leave flowers. Some left small notes: "Thank you for believing in me. You taught me kindness. You made the city feel like home." Her family decided to keep the bakeries running, not just as businesses, but as beacons of her values. Every store still displays a small plaque near the door, engraved with her words: "May your hands always work, your heart always give, and your dreams always rise." Today, decades later, her story continues to inspire dreamers who come to New York with nothing but courage. Her portrait hangs in each bakery, the same warm smile, eyes full of life. And every morning, as the first batch of bread rises in the ovens, someone whispers her old saying: "Hope, like dough, always rises aga."